Friday.
Om Agyanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshuritam yena tasmai Shrive Namah Atinalambita bhujo kanagavadato Sankirtanai kapito kamalaya tato Vishvambaro dvijavaro Yugadharma pado Jagat priyakaro karanavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Bodhagaya Pushpavanto Chakrasasamutamo Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Janasako Sukkado Paramanando Sundaro Subhadriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Yogeshwa Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishna Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Guru Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Ram Navami Ki Jai Ram Navami Mahaprabhu बहुत प्रेमा So, some technical difficulties. Good morning again, everyone. Good morning. So we gathered on the auspicious occasion of the Ram Navami, that means ninth, so it's the ninth day of the waxing moon this month, and we honor the eternal appearance of Chandra. Chandra means moon. Oh, Ram, Chandra, like the moon. It's like the moon coming from the sun dynasty, as it's described in epics. And we celebrate this day, annually and around the world. It's very well celebrated, especially in India, of course. And I'd like to speak this morning from a Bhagavatam verse from the 11th canto. It has a number of different meanings, one of which tells us something about Ramachandra in the context of doing so. It also speaks to us about Krishna and about Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Jai. Jai. It's a verse from the 11th canto, spoken by Karabhajan Muni. It's a verse that is one of the number of verses in this section discussing the yuga cycle conception, not in any elaborate way as to what they are, but particularly what the times. The Yuga speaks of the quality of time in Hindu thought, what the various yugas, what the quality of that time warrants in terms of the appearance of the Godhead, and through him and his example, the suitable means is taught as to how to attain life's perfection. So, in one of the verses coming in that discussion, and it's within that, there's a series of verses that this is connected with as well that refer to the Kali Yuga in particular. But because there were different opinions about the appearance of Bhagavan in Kali Yuga, many of which were in line with the a name for the Godhead found in the Vishnu Sahasranam, 1,000 names of Vishnu. The name is Tri-yuga. Many thought that there is no yuga avatar in the Kali Yuga. Tri-yuga means three yugas, and there are four: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. So, on that basis, this verse has been explained in other ways than the way we as Gaudiyas tend to explain it, which is very insightful from the time of Jiva Goswami. It's been explained to refer to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his time. Jiva Goswami's time, of course, is after the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the world, who is avatar for Kali Yuga, and it is the appearance of the Godhead, therefore, in that time, but in a way that you're not readily detected as such, because he appears as a devotee of himself and so forth. So it's a famous verse. As I say, there are a number of different interpretations. So I'll try to go into them, and then also explain a little why we've taken this particular route today. First, let me cite the verse: Chaktva sudus jajasurep sutaraj lakshmi dharmishta arya vachasa yadakaradharamyam mayam rigam daitaip sitamam vadhavad vande mahapurushate charanarvindam. I want to give you a general translation, and then we'll go from there. Verse says, Chaktva sudus vande mahapurusha te charanarvindam. So I offer my pranam, myself, my being, my life, vande Mahapurusha. Mahapurusha means the Godhead. So, the great original person. Vande Mahapurusha te charanarvindam. I offer myself under the lotus feet of the Mahapurusha, so to God. Who? Chaktvasadus Chadisaraj Lakshmi, who gave up the opulence, wealth, and here more readily speaks of a spiritual kind of wealth, which is a peculiar idea. I offer my respects unto him, on the lotus feet of the Mahapurusha, who gave up the opulence of wealth and beauty, it also means, and who is dharmishtari vachasa, who is very dharmic and upholds the principles of religion, following the words of the sacred texts and the advice of the saints and so forth, and who entered into the forest. And having entered into the forest, he out of passion, kindness, he wandered throughout. Throughout the forest is the basic idea. So, who's that talking about? That is the question, as I say. It's been interpreted in different ways. But we want to talk about it today, this verse, because it speaks, as I say, about Krishna, about Ram, and about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And of course, we are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, and so the Gaudiya Sampradaya and the teaching and person of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is peculiar in that it's very broad and far-reaching, universal, and very deep and specific in particular at the same time. He came, Bhagavan Sri Chaitanya, with a particular purpose in mind, an internal purpose that we can say he's ultimately about, but in the context of pursuing that internal purpose, a more general and broad purpose was also accomplished. As I say, we're talking about this verse in relation to the yugas, as it refers to, coming in this section as it does. And the yuga dharma of Kali Yuga is Nam Sankirtan, to chant the names of the Godhead and so forth, and by that attain mukti, attain salvation. That's a very broad idea. The more very specific and kind of deeper idea, really, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearances, that he is Krishna appearing and to taste himself from the vantage point of Radha. This is a very complicated and high theological idea, of course. And when we speak about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this way, then we talk about the highest prospect that those in touch with him might also attain. So very broad and very now very general and very specific. By general, I mean to say that as the person personifying teaching the Dharma of the Yuga, he teaches the chanting of the holy name, and anyone can chant in any circumstance. And the holy name, for example, in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, has many different meanings. The name Ram is there. For example, today is Ram's day, so I've been in South India where there are temples that chant this mantra 24 hours a day, and in chanting it, they think of Krishna as the hero of the Bhagavad Gita and Ram as the hero of the Ramayana, which is not what we would call, in the words of Raghunath Das Goswami, Nama Shreshtam. Nama Shreshtam api Sachiputram, he said. Raghunath Das Goswami, of course, is the teacher and saint in our lineage whose writings, poems, and so forth very much encapsulate the highest ideal of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where it can take one ultimately into that which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pursuing internally, into the ecstasy of Radha and so forth. He's referred to as the Prayojan Tattva Acharya. Prayojan means the ideal. Prem Prayojan. I said earlier that in the broad sense, the chanting of Hare Krishna is there for everyone in Kali Yuga, and by it you can attain mukti. Here we use another word, Prem Prayojan. Prayojan, the goal, and what is it? It's Prem, not mukti. So, this is a particular use of the word Prem, referring, it means love, and therefore in the full sense of the term it refers to Krishna, who personifies the Godhead in relationship with devotees in all different nuanced flavors, mellows of love that we cannot experience in relation to Narayan, to Nrsimha, to Ram. So when we say Prem Prayojan, we mean to attain the ideal of Vrindavan, and particularly highest within that is the love of Radha for Krishna. So, mukti, on the other hand, is a very broad idea. There can be different types of mukti, 5 types of mukti. Salokya, Shasti, Samipya, Salupya. These are 4 types of devotional mukti. So the term mukti refers to salvation in love of God, in awe and reverence. Basically, awe and reverence is a type of love, but it's as we know it in this world, not the full face of love. That we find the full face of love beyond awe and reverence in love and intimacy in Krishna's lila. So most lineages, as I say, use the term mukti and look at Kali Yuga as an opportunity for mukti, and of different kinds of mukti. There is the non-devotional mukti, and then there's the devotional mukti. But our acharyas, our teachers, have used the word prem, the repeatedly. And by doing so, they emphasized our goal is to attain, following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu more narrowly, if you will, or more closely, more internally, the Braja Lila, the Lila of Krishna in Vrindavan, and that touched by the influence of Radha. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very broad ideal, widespreading. As I say, people in South India chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and thinking of Ramachandra. So may chant of Ram and think of Balaram, Parashuram, or Ram, Radha, Raman. Raman here being another name for Krishna. Nam Shreshtam. The Prayojan Tattvacharya Raghunath Goswami used this phrase, Nam Shreshtam api Sachiputram. He said, my Guru, Raghunath Das, my Guru, gave me the highest conception of the name, the Nam Shreshtam, that was distributed by Sachiputram, the son of Sachi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that Nam Shreshtam and the name I referred to that I've heard in South India chanted in the temples, it's a different conception behind the name, both of which are included in the Mahamantra. One in South India, a more broad, general conception. And the one Raghunath Das is speaking about is more narrow, more full, more broad, more deep, I should say. So we, as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and close followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Guru, are interested in the deeper ideal. And so to talk about Ramachandra, who is associated not with the Braja Lila, with a special department within Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means the Paraviyom, the spiritual world. And there are thought to be many different compartments there. How many? As many as there are different faces of God. And how many different faces of the Godhead are there? There is mentioned in Bhagavad, while there is a list of 28 or so given, for example, in the third canto, that list concludes with the word and with the term asamkhya. Now, this is a few, but they are uncountable. Uncountable are the faces of Godhead. This is, as an aside, this is of course very relative to the diksha, to initiation. We take initiation in a particular line from a particular guru, properly understood with a particular ideal in mind. And the conception behind the mantra given corresponds, and so forth. Of course, as worshippers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we honor all the different avatars. We honor Ram and so forth. But Ram's lila is not our ideal. So, when we do honor him, when we do honor Narasimhadev and other different avatars and so forth, we want to speak about them in relation to our own Ishta, our own deity, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the founder, Acharya, as Jiva Goswami describes him, of our Sampradaya. He uses that term there. In Sarvasambhadini, the founder of his own group of lineages, stemming from his associates and so forth. We're coming in such a line. The Bhakti Vinod Parivar, as we refer to the family of Bhakti Vinod. So, while we honor all the different avatars, we tend to see them in a certain light. We see them through the lens of Chaitanya Vaishnavism, through the person, the deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so forth. So therefore, I've chosen this verse to speak today about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, about Ram, which also refers to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And relative to his lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lila, we know that at different times he appeared before some of his devotees in a 6-armed form. He gave them a special vision of himself. He gave this vision to Nityananda Prabhu on the occasion of the Vyasa, the Guru Purnima, the full moon in the month that usually comes in July, worshipping the Guru. It was just at this time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced Nityananda to the devotees. He said, "A great person has arrived in Nadia. Go and find him." They looked everywhere and could not find him. And then he said, "Come, I will find him." They went and found him sitting on the porch of Yadunandanacharya's place, and the great meeting between the two brothers, Gaur and Nitai, took place in Gaur Lila. And they went to the house of Srivas Thakur, and Nityananda Prabhu was asked to preside over the Guru Puja. He is Akhanda Guru Tattva, the reservoir of all the gurus, if you will. As Nityananda Ram is referred to by Krishna Chaitanya Swami, reminding us that Nityananda is a Ram. This is not Ramachandra, but Balaram. And so, on that occasion, in the course of the Kirtan and so forth that took place, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed a 6-armed form to Nityananda Prabhu, and he fainted. Vrindavan Das records this in his Chaitanya Bhagavat. He gives us a blessing that anyone who hears about this will attain Prema. So fortunate to refer to it even. And there it's mentioned that, I believe by Bhakti-yoga that this 6-armed form is sometimes shown somewhat differently. Sometimes the 2 arms of Nrsimha, the 2 arms of Ram, the 2 arms of Krishna. The reason for this is that, as explained by Rupa Goswami in Lagu Bhagavatamrita, of all the different appearances of Bhagavan, there are 3 that are Sadaishvarya Purna. Sadaishvarya Purna means that they're full Purna in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. So all of them, 3 are full. That is Krishna, Ram, and Nrsimha. And in an ascending order, they go from Nrsimha to Ram to Krishna in terms of the extent to which they exhibited these 6 opulences. But they exhibited all of them, so they possessed them all in full and showed them to different extents on the scale from lower to higher, from Nrsimha to Ram to Krishna. Nrsimha shows the 2 hands, one holding a lotus and benedicting Prahlad, the other just like this. And it's a lion's hand for tearing apart, taking away all of our material distractions and so forth. Very generous fellow. Very kind of aggressive lover. And Ram, with the 2 arms holding the bow and the arrow, relative to his lila in the forest. We'll have to go into that to some extent. And Krishna holding the flute, charming as he is. This form apparently was shown to Nityananda Prabhu, and then another 2-armed form in which the 2 hands of Krishna, the 2 hands of Ram, and the 2 hands of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu holding the danda, the staff of the renunciates, of the sannyasins, and the water pot, the kamandalu. So this is one occasion on which this Sadhuj form was manifest in the Lila. And another famous place is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the scholar Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was converted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu, after the conversion, showed him who he was, that I am Ram, I am Krishna. It reminds me of when I was young, just before I joined Prabhupada's mission, there was a fellow named Meher Baba who had these posters up around town. his fellow followers put up that I am Ram, I am Krishna. Of course, he couldn't show the 6-arm form or the 4-arm form, and his 2-arm form wasn't that attractive either, but it always kind of stuck with me. I met the devotees the next night. They were quick to tell me who was Ram, who was Krishna, who not only appear in a certain way, but appear with their associates and so on and so forth. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the point is that many people may say their guru is Ram, my guru is Krishna, the guru may say, and so forth. But we find in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is there is a claim amongst people of Bengal and other parts as well that this Nimai Pandit was Krishna, who became Sri Krsna Chaitanya when he took sannyas. He is actually Krishna. But they've supported this considerably. Here we're citing a verse from the Bhagavatam that describes him. He himself, when he taught Sanatana Goswami the core teachings, made the point that the avatar will be supported by the scripture, and by, as well, uncommon activities. So we find those uncommon activities in him, and we find considerable support from the scripture. This is just one verse, there are many. We also find, of course, that the claim amongst his followers, the insight that he was Krishna, led them to conclude, theologically astute as they were, that if he's Krishna, then Radha must be here also, and Yashoda, Nanda, Krishna's friends, and so on and so forth. And then they realized that they were, that's us, we've come, it's another lila. It's a very extraordinary insight they had. And so, good support, point being, for the idea that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually Krishna and the Yuga avatar. And the very sober Sarvabhauma, who before he was involved in a discussion of the Vedanta with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dismissed the idea presented by his brother-in-law Gopinath that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. And he dismissed it by way of saying, in Kali Yuga, God doesn't appear, he's called Triyuga. And although Gopinath responded with appropriate verses and so forth, verses can be interpreted in different ways. As it said, even the devil can quote the scripture, I think. It's a Western biblical statement. It applies. Not that Gopinath was doing that, but the Acharya Sarvabhauma said, there are many interpretations. We're not sentimental. And so after he saw the opulence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his jnana, I said there's 6 opulences: wealth, strength, fame, knowledge. Wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. He was seeing the renunciation in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. And then when Sarvabhauma sat to educate him, thinking, you're a young boy, you're only 25, and you've taken sannyas, given up the world, you're very beautiful and charming, and how will you stay in this position of renunciation? Youth is very powerful. The whole world wants youth. Everyone is telling you when you're young, you're desirable. And so you start to think so. And you think you've got time, I'm valuable. and so forth. How you spend that youth will determine how wealthy you really are. If you waste it, then it's a great loss. Use it wisely. Then in old age you can lead the youth. And through you they can understand the folly, the illusion of youth, the illusion of it and the attractiveness of it. That is why, of course, Bhagavan appears youthful. Always, yes, it is attractive. But for us, it comes and goes. And goes quite quickly. And suddenly, I'm 35 now, I'm 40, and this is my life. This is your life. So, youth is a very important time. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a young boy, only 25, he became a sannyasi. 25? 24? 24. I was fortunate to take sannyas at 25, 40 years ago. Just about this day, 40 years ago, in Vrindavan, from Prabhupada. So, I suffered from the same problem that Sarvabhauma perceived in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You're young, how can you maintain this? So he thought to fortify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's standing in renunciation by speaking to him from the scriptures as to the logic of the Vedanta. And in the course of doing so, he rendered an interpretation of the famous Bhagavatam verse, the Atmarama verse, as it's called. And he gave 9 or so different meanings, which is quite scholarly. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat silently, and his silence unsettled the Bhattacharya. A young boy, Bhattacharya was quite old at the time, speaking to him, teaching him, and he readily, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made himself available for such teaching. Thought, my uncle practically, he wants to teach me, and certainly I'll take advantage of that. But as he was explaining, he had no questions, he remained silent. His silence just caused a kind of, brought a kind of gravity into the room. A weightiness, if you will, gravity, that's of course a couple of meanings there, putting them together. A weightiness in the room. And Sarvabhauma was made uneasy. He was trying to make Chaitanya Mahaprabhu steady. He became unsteady. So doubts began to come in him. What is he thinking? I'm teaching him. I'm giving these great explanations. He says nothing. What's happening? By his silence, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu created a teachable moment in the life of Sarvabhauma. He was like, what? Answer, say something. And so, do you understand? And he questioned him. Mahaprabhu said, I understand what you said, yes, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think that you've taken the meaning of the scriptures that are very clear and clouded them with the imaginary interpretations. And of course, he was teaching the imaginary doctrine of Mayavad. It's an interesting doctrine that in some respects may be attractive to people, but if we look at the core of it, it may become a little less attractive. It says, for example, that there is no self. There is no individual self. It's a very different idea from Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we say there is a self, and there is a false self. And the real self has certain potentials. And those potentials are the potential to be an actor, a doer, an agent of action, a causal agent, a doer, an apprehender, and an experiencer. But its potential to be such, which is what a person's made up of. A person does things, apprehends things, grasps things intellectually, and experiences things, qualitative experiences red, blue, happy, sad, and so forth. It's all relative to being a person. But we can only experience those things, or be an experiencer, be an apprehender, be a doer, if we have an environment in which there are things to apprehend, things to experience, and things to do. So material energy provides an environment. The spiritual energy, the Swarup Shakti, also provides an environment. And when the jiva, the tatastha jiva, the individual self, is in touch with one of these environments or another, then its potential to be a doer, a knower, an experiencer is manifest. So the point here is this, that in material life we think of ourselves as a doer, as an apprehender, as an experiencer. The Mayavad doctrine of Advaita says you're none of those things. So this is seems like somewhat of an artificial imposition. I feel intuitively, and we all conduct ourselves as if we are doers, knowers, experiencers. The teaching is, no, you're none of these things. So it's rather like an artificial imposition. Whereas, and so the corresponding reality or liberated perfected condition in that school of thought, in Advaita, is contentless awareness. Very abstract idea. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we say, you think you are a doer, an apprehender, an experiencer, and you're right. So it's a very nice fit. In ultimate reality, you are what you think you are now. But now you're experiencing it in relation to a particular environment, a material environment, which is problematic. So your personhood manifests, but it doesn't endure because of the nature of the environment, the material environment. But if you come under the bhakti environment, you can be a doer, a knower, an apprehender in relation to bhakti, and you can therefore have a personality that's eternal, and which is, of course, arguably required for being a lover. So it's very down to earth, if you will. The ideal, I'm saying, of Gaudiya Vaishnavism very much corresponds with our present-day experience of what we are. I often say, you need only to change the foundation. The building is okay, but the foundation is wrong. Of course, it's not easy to change foundations, but so there is some heavy lifting to be done. But at the same time, which is in place, so to speak. So the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was preaching this Mayavad idea. Mahaprabhu called it an interpretation of the scripture that constitutes kind of clouding the clear meaning with your the sun, clear, bright meaning with the cloud of your imagination. And then he spoke. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke, having created this teachable moment by creating by his gravity, if you will. And then he gave an explanation of the same verse that the learned scholar Sarvabhauma, who's the most famous logician in all of India for all time, he gave 9 interpretations of the verse, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave 60-some interpretations of the verse. So the Sarvabhauma, he passed out at that. That was an exhibition of the gyan, the opulence of knowledge. He was a sannyasi, so he was detached. Sarvabhauma thought, let me give him some education, some knowledge, so that he could be fortified in this position of detachment, which is not easy to do. The world calls upon us, as I say, especially when we're young. But if we have wisdom and our intelligence is fortified, by that, theoretically, that can help us and corner us from moving in the wrong direction, so to speak. But he showed I have knowledge that far exceeds anything that you will teach. So this was extraordinary in itself. And then Mahaprabhu showed him the 6-armed form. He showed him, I am a sannyasi, holding the danda and the kamandalu. I am Ram, with the bow and arrow, and I am Krishna, with the flute. So this 6-armed form, that is what is being discussed here in this verse. It's a particular interpretation of the verse. And this is a way that I'm today speaking about Ram, again, in relation to Chaitanya, lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being our deity, how to think of Ram in relation to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We read this morning how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in South India met a Ram Bhakta. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whenever he met devotees of Ram who had real and deep devotion for Ram, he very much appreciated it and honored it. The brother of Rupa Sanatan was such, Anupam. He had deep love for Ram. Rupa Sanatan and Anupam sat together one night and came to a logical conclusion that Radha, Krishna, and Lila, this is the highest ideal, therefore we should spend our life worshipping Radha and Krishna. But Anupam, he accepted that theory, but he had love for Ram, so he couldn't sleep all night. When Mahaprabhu heard this, he was very happy to see, glorious is the Lord. The devotee will not give up his Lord, and glorious is the Lord who will not give up his devotee. So this is a peculiar thing about bhakti, and it's the beauty of bhakti, that it has a bias. It is a bias. Peculiar because we need to give up material bias to become spiritual. If we're biased, prejudiced, if we're bought and paid for, if a politician, for example, is paid for by the corporation, which they all are, then it's a problem for the citizens. He cannot or she cannot fairly administrate and take everybody's opinion equally into consideration, because somebody's opinion is providing him with extra chapatis and rice and old age pension and more. So to be unbiased, right? To be objective. Renunciation corresponds with objectivity. If we're too close to a thing and attached to it, we cannot see it for what it is. Famous saying, mother named her blind son lotus eyes. She was blind by her love for him to see his eyes as like lotuses, although blind eyes are generally not thought to be beautiful. But she was beautiful. And her vision was beautiful. What's real? Love has the capacity to turn faults into ornaments. Bhakti has the capacity to harmonize all contradictory notions. So in bhakti there's a bias. It is a bias. There's Ram Bhakti. There's Krishna. But this is a spiritual bias. It's arrived at in the context of overcoming any material biases. Because it's easy to point out that material biases are something that have to be transcended in order to be spiritual. It's easy to do that, but then when you start talking about a bias that's spiritual, it makes the head spin a little bit, but it's a more full idea. Spirituality, that means to say, is not just the opposite of material life. From attachment to detachment. It's from attachment to detachment to another kind of attachment, in which detachment is included. So it's a full idea. Just to go from one polar opposite to the other, but to combine them somehow, to harmonize both contradictory ideas, attachment and detachment. In the Gyan Marg, for example, the path of knowledge, we advance by detachment. Not in bhakti, we don't advance by detachment. Detachment is a byproduct of bhakti, which accrues within us, this detachment, by way of attachment, sadhu sangha, by attaching ourselves to sadhus. We make progress, and the progress shows itself in the early stages, in the form of detachment and objectivity. That detachment is arising out of a spiritual attachment to Krishna, to his devotees, to chanting the name, and so on and so forth. So there's detachment inside of the attachment, a full and very nuanced idea in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Love is like that. As I say, it resolves contradictions. It's a kind of knowing that doesn't have to resolve the contradictions as the mind and the intellect needs to. It can live with them. The intellect can't live with them. It needs to resolve them. Above that, you could say, yeah. If you want to think that way, it's okay. It doesn't bother me. It's all right. And more. So at any rate, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Where were we? And we were talking about a bias. Bhakti is a bias. So we find it that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he honored the bias of different devotees. This bias will come from sangha, as I say, from attachment. We'll develop a certain sangha, a certain attachment to our gurus, sadhus, and so forth, and then a certain kind of bhakti will come into us, into our lives, a certain kind of attachment for Bhagavan. Before the attachment starts to come in higher stages of bhakti, then it could be changed by different association. But at a certain point, then it will be fixed. When Mahaprabhu would see this, for example, in Anupam, the brother of Rup Sanatan, he was very happy. He couldn't give up his particular ideal. The devotee we read about in South India that Mahaprabhu met, the Ram Bhakta, also Mahaprabhu honored that. He didn't try to convert him to Krishna Bhakti. He did in some instances preach the virtues of Krishna Bhakti, even over Ram Bhakti, from his own subjective perspective, and persons were converted. But when he saw that their Bhakti was fully developed, and it was beautiful, the difference, the variety is beautiful. Nice example with regard to Ram lila that I sometimes cite to illustrate the point of spiritual bias is the story of Krishna in Dwarka, his capital along the on the seaside, where he asked Garuda, his bird carrier, to go and fetch a devotee of his named Hanuman. So Garuda flew to where Hanuman was and said, "Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, is calling you. Hop on my back and I'll fly you there." And Hanuman said, "Tell him I'll be there in a minute." And Garuda said, "Oh, what kind of devotee is this? Krishna's personally calling him, and he's supposed to be a devotee." So he flies back and he says, "Krishna, that guy, that monkey, he said, I'll be there in a minute." And Krishna was very pleased. He said, "Okay, go back and tell him that Ram wants to see him." So he flew back, and he's still there. His minute, the long minute. And he said, "Now Ram is in Dwarka and he wants to see you." And Hanuman said, "Okay, I'll be there in a minute." He said, "Give me a second," is what he said. "Give me a second." And then he disappeared. And Garuda's thinking, "What's with this guy?" And so Garuda's flying back alone. And as he's flying back alone, he hears Ram! And he sees Hanuman, who's known for jumping across the sky, going the opposite way, chanting Ram. The implication of which is, in a second he jumped. He couldn't wait for Garuda's slow boat, slow plane to Dwarka. He jumped there faster to be with Ram, had the darshan, and then was coming back the other way. Such is the nature of bias within bhakti. So this is the variety that beautifies, if you will, the unity. We're unified in that we want love, not lust. We don't want the appearance of love, that is attachment, that causes us to see people in terms of our own mental sense of self and what we can get from them, fulfill the needs that are artificial, that are a result of identifying with a mental and physical conception of self. In this mental world of self, we cannot find the full face of love. To come out of that, we're united in this. And then we'll come out through good association and end up attached to Krishna or Ram, depending upon the lineage and so on and so forth, that we've been fortunate to be connected with. So, Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya Dev, there's a number of examples of Ram Bhakti amongst his associates. I cited the Brahmin from South India, the brother of Rup Sanatan, and the very Hanuman himself is said to be present in Gaur Lila, in the form of Murari Gupta. Mahaprabhu preached to him about Krishna, but he also could not, he liked that, but he had a favoritism towards Ram. And one day Mahaprabhu took some tilak like this, chandan, and wrote on his head, Ram. He said, "You are Hanuman." So we have a place for Ram Bhakti, a big place in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And here, this verse is a very important verse. Let me explain it in terms of how it speaks of the different deities, Krishna, Ram, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that order. First about Krishna. Tyaktva sudus charisarepsita Raj Lakshmi. It says, oh, he, that Mahapurusha, the Godhead, he gave up the Raj Lakshmi. Raj Lakshmi, Raj means king, Lakshmi means Lakshmi. It means, if Raj means king, Lakshmi means like fortune, wealth, beauty. And of course, the Lakshmi is the personified Shakti consort of Narayan. Raj Lakshmi, at the same time, while referring to the consort of Narayan in terms of a person, more readily is thought to refer to Rukmini. Rukmini is the primary goddess in Mathura. There she was married to Krishna. And then they went to Dwarka later on. So Raj Lakshmi here refers to Mathura and the auspiciousness of it created by her presence there. Chaktvasudus Chadisurepsita Raj Lakshmi. How does it refer to Krishna, Mahapurusha here, who we offer our respect to? Because the Mahapurusha, Krishna, he gave up the Raj Lakshmi by giving up Mathura. He gave up Mathura, how? By being very religious and following the command, if you will, of the very pious dharmic Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the father of Krishna. Vasudeva and Devaki. Krishna was, of course, born in the prison house. They were there, put underground by Kamsa. And when Krishna was born, when he appeared in the prison house, Vasudeva and Devaki told, you should hide yourself. Some vatsalya, some parental love came. You should hide yourself. And so Vasudeva took him away from Mathura, across the Jamuna, to the Vrindavan, and he cooperated with that. So he followed the advice of the dharmic Brahmin, Kshatriya, but dharmic Kshatriya. Dharmishtari Vachasa. Followed the words of Vasudeva. And Dharmishtari Vachasa, and he entered the forest. From the city of Mathura, he went into the forest of Vrindavan. And there, Mayamrigam, Daita Ipsitam Anvadhava. There, Anvadhava, he ran around the forest, everywhere, barefoot, as a cowherd with his friends, running from one forest to another, to another, to another, as Prabhupada depicts him in his prayer. Tomara melane by avarshe shukapai, gocharane guridhin bor. Kottavani chutti mane kail duputi se din kabhavimor. When will I catch up with that barefoot cowherd running here and there throughout the day, herding cows to the various forests of Vrindavan and so on and so forth. So Anvadhava means Mayamrigam Daitapstam Anvadhava. He's running throughout the forest. This is what he did. But Mayamrigam Daitapsitam. What is the driving force behind all that running? What is the driving force? Why is he going into the forest? What is his inner purpose? Mayamrigam, because he is Mrigam means it means an animal here. Mayamrigam means here, in this context, a toy animal. He wandered around the forest like a toy animal. What does that mean? Like a teddy bear, like a stuffed animal. Like if a young girl says, "Oh, I want to have a stuffed cow." We have one in the kitchen. Very charming. It means this, what? He's running around Vrindavan everywhere, completely under the influence of Radha's love, in relation to whom he's like a teddy bear, like you could take a doll and do what you want with them. So he's a doll only in the hand of Radha. He's going to the forest for herding cows, but on the pretext of such, he's actually trying to rendezvous with with Radha and so forth. This is what the driving force in his life. Also in the Prophet's parable, did he say? The big Krishna Punya Tava will be by, he says, Radharani Kushe Habi Duality Boleto Matai. That one thing is sure, he says. This is a prayer that Prabhupada wrote to Krishna on the boat, asking him for the power to do his service. He said, one thing is sure, my dear friend, buddy, he said, that if Radharani is pleased with you, then your life is successful. This is the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, just in one beautiful Bengali verse. If Radharani is pleased with you, then your life will be successful. I want to advise you about this. Now, by the way, he goes on, of course, Radharani's message has come through my guru and asked me to do something, so I think if you give me the power to do it, that will be good for you, because Radharani will be pleased with you and your life will be successful. This is how we all got here. You all know that Krishna thought that's very good reasoning. Yeah, take the power of Nityananda Prabhu, of Balaram, and do the work of your guru, do the work of Radharani, and distribute bhakti, Krishna bhakti to the Western world, which is what he was aspiring to do, and had, in his own opinion, had been charged to do by his guru, who said, Bhaktisiddhanta said, he said to him, you should try to preach in English. So he took it as like an order. Here we are today, very fortunate. So, in this way, this verse speaks about Krishna. He was a stuffed animal in the hands of Radha. He's running all over Vrindavan in the pretext of doing this, that, and the other thing. But if you know his heart, this is what it's all about. Those who know, they try to assist him in that. This is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So then we go to Ram. How the verse speaks about Ram. This is the sadhus, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So all 6 arms, the 2 hands of Krishna playing the flute. Then Ram comes. Chaktva sudhu seng terisurev sitarachalakshmi. Dharmishtari vajasaya vadaranyam. So we know in the Ram lila that Ram was destined to be the heir to the throne of Dasarath. But by some intrigue, then on the day before his coronation, one of the wives of Dasarath, who had been affected by bad association, she got bad association and was told that Dasarath, he's going to make Ram the king, not your son. Ram is the son of one of his other wives, but your son should be the king. This is the whole problem that Bhagavad Gita, for example, begins with dharmic kshetra, kurukshetra, samaveta yutsava, mamaka pandavaschaiva, kimakuru vatasamdra. Mamaka, mam. It's a very small word, my. Small in English too. It's only 2 letters, my, but it's a big problem. My sons. Not your sons. And the whole war came out of this. My country, not your country. See, all these problems. Sexism, racism, nationalism, it's all just arising out of the bodily concept of life. As much as we're in it, these problems will remain. You may reduce them to some extent, one extent or another. It may look like we live in peaceful times, but probably in recent peaceful times, more people have died than in some of the more earlier wars with swords and lances and horses and so forth. So it's just the nature of the world. It's the nature of the bodily concept of life. It's a very unbecoming, ugly affair. Our bodily identification causes this kind of bias that I was speaking about earlier we have to overcome. In the context of developing a bias towards Krishna, Ram, so on and so forth. It's the cause of all problems. The Bhagavad Gita begins with this. What did my sons, Dhritarashtra asked, and the sons of Pandu do? He's making this differentiation. So, my. From the my comes an I. What I think is mine determines what I am. I am, used to be as a kid, I wasn't, but it's a popular advertisement. I am a Marlboro man. There was a guy on a horse, smoking. Now he's coughing. Our my determines our sense of I. My country, I am an American. So it says nothing is mine. The I that arises out of the sense of my has no standing either. It will not endure. It's here today and be gone tonight. Big problem. So, bad association, this is the idea, based on the bodily concept of life, which we're tipped in the direction of. So we're susceptible to such. So she became susceptible. And the teaching is also, see how susceptible you are to this. So keep good association always. Because there's a little bit of association, you'll go a long way. A little good association will go a long way as well. But we should keep ourselves fortified with good association. So this bad influence came in, and huge problem for the kingdom. Kingdom of Dasarath, which was all geared up now to honor the passing of the crown, the coronating of Ram, who was just the beloved of everyone, including Bharat, his elder brother, whom was it? Kaikeyi was influenced to think that your son Bharat should be the king. And do you remember, she was told, that the king gave you a promise that she had done something that he gave her. Anytime you asked, you wanted, if you give you a promise that you ask me one thing and I will, whatever it is, I will fulfill it. Something, I forget the incident that gave rise to that promise on the part of the king. But the bad association told her, remember that you had a promise. Now you go to him and say, you made a promise that whatever I wanted one time I asked to get it. So my request is this, that Ram not become the king, but rather that he be banished to the forest, and that my son, Bharat, will be the king. Such corruption, even in Ayodhya. Of course, this is the Prakat Lila. In this world, these things come in the context of the Lila to teach us something, that we might know what the Lila is really about and enter into the real Ayodhya, for example, where there are no such problems. Same occurs in Krishna Lila. There are some evil influences, demons and so forth, but in Aprakat Lila, the unmanifest Lila, the ideal, then they're not found. They're here to teach. So she asked the next day, and the king just about died to hear such a thing, and the whole kingdom along with him. But she may remain steadfast. Well, she remained steadfast in wanting that, but more than that, Ram, Vachasaya Yadagadharanya, here the words are used. Dharmishtarya Vachasaya Yadagadharanya. He was very dharmic. So he would, it's very painful to see the measure of the dharma of Ram. That's how we know that he's God, because no one could be so good, so truthful, so, to do what's right. It's always the right time to do the right thing. Martin Luther King was a good one. It's always the right time to do the right thing. To live like that is very kind of superhuman. It's superhuman. As I've said before, in the life of a sadhu, if he or she is actually a sadhu, he can say or she can say, I'm experiencing God. How can we know that? We can't enter into the private, subjective experience of the meditative saint. I realize I experienced that I'm eternal, even though my material body will die. How do we know? Why should we believe that? How can we can't access that? We can't verify that. But we believe it because there are other observable symptoms in a sadhu that are superhuman. That the sadhu has risen above the passions of the world. It's an incredible idea. Be equally balanced in the face of all opposites. Kipling's poem "If" very much personifies this ideal, which is a kind of a core in poem explanation of the philosophy of the Gita, the underlying philosophy of the Gita, which brings us to non-duality. transcendent goods and bads, happies and sads, all of which appear in the mind and so forth. On that plane of non-duality, then there's a room for a spiritual duality, the bias for Ram or Krishna, as I was speaking about earlier. So the theology in which there's a bias rests, the art, if you will, of Krishna Lila and Ram Lila is drawn on the canvas above of non-duality. I mean, risen above the, again, material biases and prejudices and so forth. So we can see that in a person. I mean, it's really, this is supernatural. We can see the supernatural has been demonstrated. And of course, it's interesting that the supernatural is what everybody wants their kids to be and themselves to be as well. In other words, the ideals that the life of a sadhaka posit. Everybody actually wants to be like that or thinks that's how you should be, but we think it's not possible entirely, so we'll do it to some extent and so on and so forth. And there is no system in the world to focus entirely on arriving at that, other than genuine spiritual practice itself. It has it as its focus, and it does produce results. But not many people entering the school. Even though everybody admittedly, by their words, by their actions, wants that. You follow what I'm saying? We want that people should be unbiased and fair, and to be perfectly fair and balanced and kind. And how can you be kind? And remain in the bodily concept of life. To some extent we can be kind. We can move in that direction. And until we come out of it entirely, how can we be fully a giver? And we still need to feel we need to take because we're identified with something that has needs. But everybody says you should be kind. You should. I mean, it's simple. These are simple things. With the golden rule: do unto others as you do unto yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. How can you do that? Unless you understand that a neighbor and I come from the same place, from the ground of being. We are the nature of consciousness. Therefore the Gita says, Krishna says in the Gita in the 6th chapter, the perfect yogi is one who understands the sufferings of others to be his own. You see, we're not different. On a certain level, we are all consciousness. We reach a monad of consciousness, and in touch with bhakti we can be different on top of that. We can be one, and arise above the dualities of material existence and enter into the spiritual world and have dualities of differences that are beautiful rather than ugly as they are here. So, to continue the description of the lila, the context of the verse, Ram was very dharmic. He was superhuman in this sense. He's one of the human avatars, human-like avatars. What he does that's superhuman primarily is he acts in this way. So here with the whole kingdom said, forget that promise. That's nuts, So he gave a promise, and she's got bad association. There's very good reason to say, forget it, don't grant her the promise. Ram should be the king. He barred himself. No, he should be the king. So, but Ram, no, my dad made a promise. My dad gave his word. And so I'm going to see that my father's word is upheld. He's an Aryan. He's a proper dharmic person. So what he says should come true. And so, in spite of many good reasons, he did that. And he entered the forest. And he gave up Raj Lakshmi to his Sita. He was prepared to. But then Sita somehow reasoned her way into the occasion and brought along Lakshmi. Sita, Lakshman, and Ram into the forest. So continuing with the verse. And there in the forest, Mayamrigam, this is a famous central point, section of the Ram Lila. We just touched on one, the banishing of Ram from the kingdom. Now he's in the forest. The central event in the forest that then that the rest of the entire Ramayana plays out of is Maya Mrigam Darite Ipsimam. That means Maya Mrigam. Mrigam means animal, and it means a deer. A deer. Maya Mrigam, but a special kind of deer. A Mayak deer, a magical deer. So this Ravana, the materialist in the Ram Lila, he approached Maricha, a mystic Rakshasa, man-eater, and he told him that he wanted him to help him in defeating Ram, which Maricha said, "You're nuts. I already had an encounter with Ram earlier, and this guy's like off the map. You can't defeat him. It's not possible. I've tried to advise you about this before, but you don't listen to good advice. You only hear what you want to hear, rather than what you need to hear." And Ram said, "Well, that's what I'm like," and so Ram said, and so that's what's happened. So he convinced him, and which Maricha said, "This will be the death of myself and you and the whole group, but what can I do? I'm under your command, so I'll do it." So he, through his yogic powers, which are not the property only of sadhus, apparently, so therefore we're not very much enamored by such displays of powers. Different people with different motives can attain them. So he had the power. The story goes to turn himself into a magical golden deer. Very beautiful description in Ramayana of this deer. And the idea was the deer would frolic through the forest, and Sita would become attracted to the deer, and then, well, that's what happened. So Sita saw the deer and said, "Oh, Ram, look at that extraordinary deer. If you could catch him, we could have him as a pet." And Lakshman said, "Looks to me like it's a Rakshasa. It's not an ordinary deer." So Lakshman was seeing through the magic of the Maya, of the Mahamaya of the Rakshasa. But Sita dismissed Lakshman. And Ram tended to concur with him, but he thought, okay, if it's a Rakshasa, I should capture him anyway. If it's not, then I've got a prize pet for my Sita. So, meanwhile, the deer bounded through the forest, and so Ram went after the deer. Lakshman was concerned, right? And stayed to protect Sita. Ram said, "You stay here, you protect Sita, and I'll go and get the deer." And so he chased the deer. The deer went a great distance, and then he captured the deer and killed the deer, and it was a Rakshasa. But as the Rakshasa Maricha was dying, he yelled out in the voice of Ram, "Lakshman, help!" And Sita heard, and Lakshman heard the voice of Ram, and Sita said, "Let's go. Ram's calling. He needs help." This is a very trying moment for Lakshman. And he said, "No, I'm not going in. Ram's fine. Ram's fine. I'm staying right here." And so she said, "So what kind of brother are you? What kind of friend are you? You want me for yourself. Therefore you're willing to let Ram undergo difficulty and perhaps be destroyed and so that you can have me for yourself." This is like a stake in the heart of Lakshman. Krishna's Kaviraj brings this up in Chaitanya Charitamrita after his beautiful description of the ontological position of Nityananda Prabhu, Nityananda Ram. At the end, he tells that this Nityananda Prabhu, he is Balaram. And he is the elder brother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as he is the elder brother of Krishna. Because in Ram Lila, he appeared as the younger brother, and he said, "I'm never doing that again. I will never be the younger brother of the Godhead. I will only appear as older brother. I cannot take it. Being under him is just terrible. I've got to be over him in some capacity. And so in Krishna Lila, he's the elder brother. He's the Maryada Purusha, the person who watches the character of Krishna, make sure he behaves properly, as asked of him by Mother Yashoda. Of course, he doesn't think that going with the gopis is bad behavior, so he turns a blind eye to it. And in Gaur Lila, he appears as the elder brother Nityananda, but because of him we have the devotee Sampradaya. He started the whole thing. So, but in Ram Lila, he was in a very difficult situation, so it was very painful for him. And of course, Sita's bleeding, and so then he made a circle around Sita, which is like a circle of fire, so don't go outside of the circle. And then he went to find Ram, and then Ravana came and kidnapped Sita. Of course, we learned this morning that he only kidnapped the Mayic form of Sita, but for the sake of the Leela, it appeared like the real form of Sita. And so, again, the whole rest of the Leela comes out of this particular event. So we've touched on some core events of Ram Leela. We'll include in this in extension from the verses, what the verse is talking about. Mayamrigam deiti epistamam dhamava. Because she desired it, Ichita, being merciful to her, Ram went after the Mayamrigam, the magic deer. And of course, when she was kidnapped, then Ram roamed throughout the forest and secured the help of various creatures, including the great monkey Hanuman ki jai. And they went to Lanka and conquered Ram and returned to Audarya and so on and so forth. So all essence of that is this verse is the point. It's a verse about Krishna. It's a verse about Ram. And of course it's a verse about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We'll conclude this. Chakva sudustadisariptidharaj Lakshmi. He, that Mahapurusha, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave up Paraj Lakshmi, Vishnu Priya Devi, his wife, and took sannyas. Chakva sudustadisariptidharaj Lakshmi. The whole of Nadia was in love with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The whole of Nadia. And for him to take sannyas, not only he gave up Vishnu Priya, but he gave up the whole of Nadia. He had to go, and sannyas means to enter the forest. It's a poetic way of speaking about it. Leave the metropolitan area of the world of social intercourse and so forth and whatnot, the gramikata, the gossip, but go away from the world, to leave the world, to enter into the forest. He gave up the whole loving community that entered the forest, and ostensibly he did so on the plea of fulfilling the words of a Brahmin. So, dharmishta arya vachasaya. Mahaprabhu is very dharmic. As a sannyasi, in particular, its adherence to the ashram of a sannyasi was extraordinary measure of knowledge and renunciation. He made the elderly sannyasis like Paramananda Puri and Keshava Bharati were like grandfathers to him. Staunch old sannyasis wearing only deer skins, and so he made them nervous about their sannyas commitments and so forth as a 24-year-old boy. Very extraordinary measure of renunciation we find in him. So he has the dharma of Ram, if you will. He's superhuman in that respect. Very dharmic. And he was cursed by a Brahmin who was not allowed to enter into the kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the house of Srivas. He was not allowed. He said, I should be allowed to enter because I am pure. I live only by drinking milk. Mahaprabhu laughed and said, you think that's what purity constitutes? That kind of purity does not get you into my kirtan. He said, I curse you then, but you'll never have a happy family life. So Mahaprabhu said, okay, then we fulfill the curse, and in due course, he took sannyas. His family life was broken. So the point is, he's very dharmic. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we find the dharmic nature of Ram, but we find a preoccupation with Krishna lila, who appears adharmic, going with gopis and on the surface, which enables us to understand that this gopi lila and so forth is super dharmic. Do you understand? It appears adharmic, but somebody who's so dharmic like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such a perfect sannyasi, that even elderly sannyasis were frightened by the measure of his adherence to the strictures of the life of sannyas. That person, the strength on which he is so dharmic was his preoccupation internally with the affairs of the Vrindavan people and gopis with Krishna, which on its face looks like, I don't know if I want to go there. Krishna is dancing with other people's wives, and what's this? So it's not what it appears to be. It is what it is we can understand through the person of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why Bhakti-Vinod Thakur said, I was brought up with a bias against the Bhagavatam, thinking it was kind of a sex book, in the name of scripture or something like that. But when I came in touch with Chaitanya Charitamrita and understood the Bhagavatam through the person of Chaitanya, then I could understand it. It was super religious. Savai pumsam parodharma gato bhakti parodharma, Prema dharma, above the dharma of the varnashram, above the dharma of being yogically balanced and so on and so forth. This prey, this madness, this extreme bias of the inhabitants of Vrindavan towards Brajandananda and Krishna. This is what he had. And this preoccupation internally allowed him to be so stout, morally, if you will, externally. So we find in him Krishna and Ram, is what I'm saying. Both. Dharmishta Arya Vachasa Vyadagaranyam, so on the basis of this curse of the Brahman. So Brahmins have said, Brahmins have spoken, and I will follow. He took sannyas. And Mayamrigam here, Taiti, what does it mean? Anuvadab, he wandered around everywhere. Mayamrigam, here Mayamrigam in this context means chasing after the people under the influence of Maya, as a sannyasi, teaching them all these things about Rama and Krishna. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Jai. Ram Bhagwan ki jai. Jai. Bhagwan ki jai. Jai. Ram Navami Mahamotsavati ki jai. Oh, Prema.
Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Time? 12:23. Time for Arctic. Arctic, no.
The offering can later. This is.
Any question?
There's cloth there. Cloth.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot about you.
Pushing myself on.
So in that regard, we talked something about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sannyas, the standard measure of his renunciation and so forth. And in our family coming from Bhakti Vinod, due to the innovations of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a formal renounced order has been established. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi, formally. He took sannyas from Keshava Bharati. But when Sanatana Goswami formed the Sampradaya, he didn't form a sannyas order, but he formed an order of renunciates. Sometimes we refer to them as Babajis, but they didn't typically dress in saffron cloth and carry the staff like we find in other Vaishnava Sampradayas and throughout India and so forth. But Bhaktisiddhanta, wanting to fulfill the vision of Bhakti Vinod to spread devotee Vaishnavism the world over, which is the vision and the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he conceived of establishing an order of sannyasins who would, at least in India, by their very dress and appearance, would be given a regard. The renunciates in the Gaudiya lineage who would wear the white cloth, like Sanatan, short white cloth. They would tend to live in the dham and primarily engage in contemplative life and bhajan, maybe some writing and so forth, but not be in public. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted some missionaries, if you will. This is a time when Western missionaries were coming with Christianity to the world, to India. And so he thought we'll have our own missionaries, Gaudiya missionaries, and we'll address them in the traditional saffron cloth, which in India means sadhu. Oh, and he should be respected and so forth. Just like a policeman has a certain uniform, and you respect him or they shoot you these days. We should ask her some questions first and then shoot later. But and to speak as a preacher, as a sannyasi, wearing the cloth of a sannyasi, we will be able to speak well as much as we can listen well, because we actually ask and try to understand what people think and how they feel and so forth. And then we don't listen to them, we just regurgitate some dogma that we've heard that will not be effective. You have to listen in order to chant. You have to listen in order to speak well and hit the heart, touch the heart of people. So, at any rate, he created Bhakti-yoga Thakur, a renounced order, and he called his renunciates living drums that could go here, there, and everywhere. And so, we follow in that line. I was given a sannyas by Prabhupada. It's a innovation in lineage and its effectiveness. Some people question, there's never been, what is this newfangled thing, they're dressed like this, they're not Gaudiya people. But you have to judge a thing, of course, by its results, and who we are the results. So we see Prabhupada was such a sannyasi, he came to the Western world, and so on and so forth. So it's been a very useful innovation tool, if you will, that Bhakti-yoga Thakur put in place, and so we follow in that. And so, again, along those lines, I asked Sanatana to move in that direction. I'm not giving him sannyas today, but I'm going to give him a saffron cloth to wear, and maybe sometime in the future we'll plan to give him sannyas as well. So you begin to wear this, and everybody look at you like you're important, and you should know I've really got some work to do. Live up to the expectations of the cloth, and be living kind of drum, if you will, which people seeing you can understand what is the standard of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And when you speak, also speak appropriately with support from scriptures. You have to study and speak and set a good example. Sanatana Prabhu ki jai. Krishna ki jai. Lord Prema.
Guru Maharaj ki jai.
So, Arti, questions? Any questions? Couldn't see what the one the Arti. Now ready? Okay, it'd be nice to sit with all of you. We went a little over time. But anyway, it's a holiday. I don't have to work today. So we have Arti and then Mahaprasad. Ram Navami, Mahamotsvatiti.